Hello and welcome to another episode of Chats with Chip. I'm your host, Chip Griffin, and I am very pleased to have with me today my friend Chris Williams. He has a dog and likes to paddleboard. How's that for an introduction, Chris?
That's perfect. That's the best introduction I've ever had. My two passions in life.
It's probably the most unusual that listeners have heard on this show, but we were talking in the pre-show and figuring out how to start the show off, and well, that just sounded like a fun way to do it. So tell us first about your dog, Chris, and then you can tell us about the rest of why you're actually here.
So I have a hand-me-down dog. His name is Blue.
A hand-me-down dog? What does that mean?
One of the DAs here in our community lives in a zero lot line down the street from us, and so they found this puppy outside their horse stable, and it got bigger than the zero lot line. So now we have what looks like a yellow lab, but not quite right, missing a few brain cells, but he's a sweet boy and he hangs out with me all the time. He's laying here in the studio.
You heard it here, folks. This is something you do not hear on other agency business podcasts.
That's right. We get right to the point of things. This is what really matters.
Absolutely. So when you are not paddleboarding or playing with your brain cells short dog, hand-me-down dog, I guess, what is it that you actually do, and why did I invite you here?
Yeah, good question. So truly, Blue and I and the paddleboard spend a lot of time together. We have 5 kids, Jill and I do. We travel a ton. We have a lot of playtime. I work less than 30 minutes a day, and most days I don't work at all. And we have a growing, thriving agency. It's fantastic. And what I do is I love figuring out time efficiencies. I'm kind of a geek when it comes to time and how to save time. And so I've just used our businesses over the years as kind of a lab, a place to experiment on what actually gets the owner's time back, allows profitability to go up, and lets people live their lives.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we have businesses, or it's why we should have businesses, right? I mean, why take on the risk of entrepreneurship if you don't get the rewards?
Mm-hmm. I wish more folks got the reward. We hear so many people, Chip and I both, just frustrated with how, they got into the dream, and yet the money and the time freedom just aren't paying off like they thought. And that's so unneeded.
Mm-hmm. So let me drill into this 30 minutes a day thing, because I know agency owners are listening and saying, okay, come on, seriously, 30 minutes a day. Can you really run a business in 30 minutes a day? I'm going to go out on a limb and imagine that you haven't always been able to spend 30 minutes a day. No. It took something to get there.
Yeah, it did. So it was probably 7-8 years ago. I was working 16-hour days like we do, not making enough money like we do. And I kept hearing about this concept called the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, right? That book that we've all read, and none of us had a life change. And so I read it once, and I was like, that's crazy. There's no way. And I was like, I don't know. What if I just did everything he said to do in the book? So everything that applied to me in the book, I literally started doing. And literally within 4 months, my income tripled, and my time was cut down to 4 hours a day. Wasn't at the 4-Hour Work Week yet. But I was like, oh my gosh, this works. I hired staff, just a simple VA structure, 1 or 2 VAs to help me with just calendaring and emailing. And then I started delegating more and more and building that team. And then I started getting into higher ticket sales and it freed up. Once you had time freed up, all of a sudden my mind got freed up, and I was able to see opportunities for clients, see better ways to sell, see places where I could charge more, be more profitable. And it just took off. It just simply works. And I've just honed that over the years. By, I bet 8 months in, I was down to 2 hours a day. And then slowly it's gotten down below 30 minutes a day, or a lot of days where I don't work, as I've built my team.
Right. So like you, I read the 4-Hour Work Week, and I think that there are a lot of good principles in there that really anyone can apply, not just business owners, but any kind of, worker who's in a leadership role of some sort can apply. My issue with that book has in part always been that Tim Ferriss clearly works more than 4 hours a week.
Yes.
Right. He spends more than 4 hours a week doing media appearances and his own podcast. And those. So it's clear to me that while he preaches it, he doesn't necessarily live it. And so that's been one of my concerns in people sort of looking and saying, okay, well, I can be Tim Ferriss in 4 hours a week. And really, you can become more efficient and you can get down to 4 hours a week or 30 minutes a day, but you have to be realistic about what you're going to be doing in that, right? I mean, you cannot be Tim Ferriss in 30 minutes a day.
No, no. And Tim admits that in a few interviews I've heard him on. I don't
Yep.
follow Tim very closely anymore. I used to when I was kind of diving into that stuff, but he admits that there's other things he does now, but his premise was, hey, if you can build the machine that pays for your lifestyle and manage it in a very small amount of time, then you can be freed up to do things. And since then, he's built on that. And that's what I've done as well. I've built multiple businesses since we figured that out, because all of a sudden I have staff and I have time. And as entrepreneurs, all of us, everybody listening and watching us right now, we're all crazy brained. We love thinking of 10 new ideas at once. And it gives me space to sort those out and play with the next idea without having to worry about the bills. It's like, It's like I get to be an entrepreneur as a hobby now.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, if an agency owner, takes a look at the principles in that book, and, maybe they take a look at Built to Sell, which is another great book that helps you think about the systems and processes. Right. And I am a systems and processes guy. I'm a huge believer that is how you maximize profitability. You can grow efficiently and you can get to, whatever the amount of inputs you want to put are, whether that's, 30 minutes a day, 4 hours a week, 20 hours a week. I mean, maybe it's even just a normal 40-hour week instead of an 81, right? I mean, whatever you want, you can get if you're building these proper systems and processes to help you move forward.
Yeah, so true, Chip. And I love the kind of stuff that you teach, because you're teaching people like all of us as agency owners, you're teaching everyone how to be that CEO or CFO or chief operating officer. You're getting that C-suite view of, here's how to run your business, not here's how to do everything in your business, but here's how to actually be the boss, step back, let others help you, and get systems, people, processes, all that lined up, and make wise financial decisions. All of that goes together. And that's the beauty of people who are entrepreneurs, learning from what you're teaching. By the way, anybody watching or listening, Chip didn't ask me to plug all this. It's just the truth. Once you learn how to look at your business like a CEO, then all of a sudden your business changes. And it changes because we change. I found that I was the biggest hurdle. I was the weak spot in my business. It wasn't my staff that I was frustrated with. It wasn't the problem client I was frustrated with. It wasn't not having enough cash flow early on or working too much. It was me. And when I learned how to be the right boss, the right CEO, then all of a sudden everything started changing.
Right. And really it's about trying to make sure that you're spending your time wisely. Right. And as you say, not necessarily knowing how to do and getting involved in, even worse, every aspect of your agency business, which I see all the time. And so you need to ask yourself, would you pay someone your hourly rate to do the task that you're doing right now? So if your hourly rate is $200, $300, $400 an hour, whatever it is, and hopefully it's, at least somewhere in that range, and you're not, billing out at $50 effectively an hour or something like that. But whatever your effective hourly rate is, would you pay someone to do what you're doing right now? And if you wouldn't, you probably shouldn't be doing it either.
So true. That's a great way to look at it. It really is. That flips the thing around and lets you measure it. Actually, I love that.
I think it's a framework that allows you to think about it where you sort of take yourself out of the equation, right? Because I think that the biggest challenge that any entrepreneur has is it's hard to look at themselves. And so if you imagine someone else doing what you're doing, what would you tell them about that?
Yes. Yes. So important. Looking at ourselves, we just come back and stay on that. Anybody is in this entrepreneurial journey, we are it. We are the hubs that make it all happen. We're the ball of energy that makes it happen. We're pushing. And when we get ourselves right, we get figured out, when we start even incrementally making those small changes to step up, be better at time management, be better at financial management, be better at having those tough conversations with a team member, those things, man, they just change us, and then they change our businesses exponentially.
Right. Yeah. And look, I mean, in the early stages of a business, you're going to have to do some of those things, right? So if you're in month one of your agency, you can't apply that same lens, right? Because, chances are you are doing a bunch of things at that point that you wouldn't pay someone else to do, but it doesn't make sense to just yet because you're not, cash flow positive yet. But if as you're growing, if you start looking at that, that's how you get down to, your appropriate number of input hours per week into each business, and or like you starting new businesses, right? So you're not just limited, if you will, by the one thing. And so why don't we talk about sort of what you've built up, because you do agency work, but you do other things too.
Yes. So our agency serves surgeons and subspecialties in really unique niche communities around the country, around the U.S., depending on where you listen to. And that's what our team does. That's what I spend very little time doing. That agency is freaking awesome. It's so fun to be part of it and see what our team does as they build and grow surgery groups that are helping communities. So fun.
And was that your first agency?
That's the fourth.
Okay.
Fourth digital agency. And before that, I owned a financial advisory firm. So I have a very data-driven brain, which is where a lot of this comes from, and sold that in 2011. And it's been great. So the fourth agency we're in, we've changed agencies because we've shifted. And I don't want to encourage people just to constantly swap brands, swap agencies, chase the next shiny object. That wasn't it at all. We changed because we were doing the research and seeing that there was a niche that we could follow that was a significant enough shift where it was better to maintain the products and services we were already offering to an existing agency market, but actually shift and go into this new space in a fresh, clean, new way. So we would either sell the clients or the group to a senior staff member or to another agency who was going to be able to do that better long-term, but we knew we wanted to follow something that's going to be more profitable and more efficient for us. So that's why we've changed. And then since then, we've actually taught this model. We teach our agency model, and that's been so much fun. If there's anything I do that takes my time right now, it's teaching. I didn't know how much I loved it. Right now it's all this COVID stuff bouncing around, and anybody with kids like me, we're figuring out, do we have to homeschool? What's going on? We're horrible homeschool parents, but I love teaching other entrepreneurs. It's like I get to be part of other people's businesses without it's like having grandkids, I think. I don't have any grandkids yet, but I get to have them over and then send them away and go do great. And I'll see you in a week,
Right. So tell me a little bit more about how you work with agencies, because I think you've got an interesting model for how you do it.
Yeah. So we do an exclusive group. We do not mean exclusively mean we don't do any one-on-one consulting. We only work in a group setting. So we take 15 agency owners at a time, and we do this in 3 groups a year. I like to take the summers completely off because I want to hang out with kids, but we take
and the dog. Don't forget the dog.
And the dog and the paddle, right? Okay. We take 3 groups a year of 15 agency owners, and we take them through a process that allows them to scale up their profit margins and decrease their time. Our goal in the first section of that, we're together for a year. Everybody starts the group and rolls in through a year. But in the first 12 weeks, our goal with that is to significantly increase. Typically, most folks in our group have doubled their profit margins and cut their time in half within 12 weeks. And that's not a pie in the sky or a get rich quick. It's a lot of work. We also have my executive team teaching their team members how to do that. I'm teaching entrepreneurs. My team's teaching their team members. So we're attacking this from all angles. So the people who jump in that group, they got to be ready to make some significant change, and they got to be ready to really get after it. Mm-hmm. And then once they get those metrics hit, then they're allowed to go into the second phase of our mastermind group, which is where everybody else collects once they finish that first phase of increasing profit, decreasing time, because we can build sustainability. There's so much you can do with more resources, time and money, long-term, to make something just super cool for you and your community, or however you want to use your resources,
Mm-hmm. Now, talk to me a little bit about the kinds of agencies that do best with this structure. I mean, how big are they? How old are they? What are their specialties? Those kinds of things.
Yeah, all of these are digital creative marketing type agencies. So copywriters, website builders, we have coaches and consultants that work in a lot of spaces that are in that group. But just so they're all marketing focused. It could be videographers, photographers, any ad managers, just that whole marketing sphere, anybody who's connected to pushing their clients' brands or products forward, mm-hmm. and they're working digitally. Most of them have several years of experience, and all of them have to at least have one key staff member currently on staff most of them have several staff members that are either 1099 or employed. It doesn't matter, but they have help.
Right.
You got to have help to make this work. If
Right.
Anybody watching or listening, if you want to actually start changing and growing as an entrepreneur, you eventually, even though people are messy, and I'm one of them, I can talk about people because I am too. People are messy, but you eventually have to jump that gap and hire a person.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way you can grow something bigger than you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're not doing that, you're effectively a freelancer, which is fine, right? If you want to be a freelancer, that's a perfectly viable option. But the way you approach things as a freelancer are different than if you are looking to build an actual agency business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think being clear with yourself about what you want. I mean, one of the things that I spend a fair amount of time when I work with agencies is trying to figure out what does the owner actually want out of it, because I'm always shocked at how little time they've spent thinking about that. Because so many are accidental agency owners. I mean, right now, I'm sure there are tons of accidental agencies being created. The owners don't even realize that's what's happening. They got laid off from somewhere, perhaps, and so they've started to do a little bit of freelancing, and eventually they'll start taking on enough work that they have to sub some of it out. And 2 years later, oh my God, I've got an actual business here, but what am I doing with it? And if you're not clear with yourself, are you looking to maximize your money? Are you looking to sell it someday? Are you looking to have the 30-minute day, 30-minute a day gig? Whatever it is that you want, you can structure the business around it, but only if you know what you want.
Yes, so true, Chip. And most people are really like kind of vague on that because they get into, like you said, they're accidental. They just roll into it. All of a sudden, a year later, they're an entrepreneur.
Right. And inertia takes over.
Yeah. But the design is so important, and having that end goal. And if you think, well, I don't really know what my end goal is, just have the next couple of steps kind of in view, and you can start steering the ship. We think of that early stage of agency ownership when you're just getting started, may or may not have one person, and you're just really early on. We think of it like pedaling a bike. So you have a bike. All of a sudden now, that's a machine. That's great. You've built some processes, you know how to do your workflow, whatever. Bikes are more efficient than walking. And that process piece is super great. So have that bike. Make sure you build your processes like Chip is telling you. And then adding a rider to that bike is like adding your first team member. All of a sudden, you can get off the bike. You can put someone else on the bike, and you can sit back every now and then and watch someone else riding your bike, which gives you that strategy and that ability to see what's coming and think a little more about the design of what you want to do. And then once you figure out real profitability and you get your numbers right and you figure out how to really sell and how to really chase that market segment that's going to pay the most, that's like changing out the bike for a motorcycle. You got a rider now, you got a motorcycle, this thing's going. And you're still sitting over to the side, though, being that business leader that Chip talks about constantly, and you're able to watch the process happen. And when you can do that, you can be so strategic.
Now, the folks who are in your group, what would you say are the biggest things that hold them back? I mean, is it lack of process? Is it lack of planning? Is it just what is it that's holding them back?
Yeah, it's a couple things. Typically, it's not knowing either how to get the right leads, and that's usually because they don't realize why people are coming to them to begin with. And that sounds like, well, you got to build the know, like, and trust thing, and you got to have a funnel, and you got to no. We build a process, and you can too. Anybody can do this. Building a process, not you, Chip, but anybody listening, building a process of why people come to you. And understanding what that is, because every bit of communication you have, every Facebook post you want to put out there, every client engagement call you have needs to be focused around why people are choosing you, and let them choose you. That's a process, right? It's a process.
And there is a reason.
There is.
You may not realize it, but there is a reason. And by the way, it is not your team.
No.
The number one reason agencies always tell me, oh, we get hired because we've got the best team. Baloney.
No.
Baloney, because every agency says that. So there's another reason. What is it?
You get hired, all of us get hired because there's a felt need. I feel, and I don't logically think, all right, even though I try to be logical, I feel that what's going wrong or out of my control or that's going to get me where I want to go is something you've got. And if I feel that you've got it and I can trust you, I will make a buying decision. It's just that simple. The thing is, most of us as entrepreneurs, we think we know what the client needs, and we probably do because we're experts. But we don't realize that 10 steps before they even get there, there's this little tiny want that they have. And that's really all they're trying to buy.
Right.
So we offer that to them, and then we can take them where they need to go. So the people in our groups, they're trying to figure out the real logic behind the feelings that are going on with their market and put a process around that. Then they're trying to figure out a closing process, something they can lean in on, a script or something where they can do it over and over and over and measure what's working and what's not working in their closing process. Again, processes are something you can measure, and it's so important that we have those. And then, so it's getting people in the door with a process, closing them, and then we get into workflow. So people start closing a bunch of deals at a higher profit margin than ever. Great. But now they got a problem. They get too much work. So we're designing that proper workflow and bringing in key staff members as we need to help with that, really helping them get out of that bootstrapping place and into something where they can really just thrive, you know?
And I would imagine, based on what you do, you've come down on the pro niching side of the debate.
You know, I hear that debate all the time. But here's my position on it. First of all, whatever you want to do that makes you happy, you. But if you want to have a hyper profitable agency, you need to be really specific about what you do or who you serve, or both.
Ideally both.
Yes. And people argue, well, I'm really good at websites, but I want to serve everyone. Okay, at least you're focused on websites. Some people say, I only want to serve air traffic controllers, but I do everything they need. Okay. But if you can narrow it down and get both those circles laying over each other, you are going to be in the sweet spot. You're going to make more money. Your team's going to be more focused. Your marketing more focused. Your closing rates go up. Every process you have gets measurable. It's insane how predictable it gets. So that's why I'm a niche guy.
And I mean, I think that people misunderstand niching too, because they immediately think I need to specialize in a particular industry. And it may not be a specific industry. You can specialize in serving a certain kind of organization. It may not be a specific industry, but it may be, organizations of, 10 to 20 employees are my sweet spot, who have, no CFO, or, I mean, as long as you can define tightly who it is and you can produce a relatively narrow list of those prospects, you've effectively niched.
Absolutely. Yep. Just because we have a certain job title or a certain type of product we build doesn't make us necessarily the right niche. You gotta, it's who. It's not the thing, it's not the type of business we serve, it's the person that's going to buy from you. That person is your niche.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I would sort of generalize to say that most agencies, I think, fails to succeed at the level that they could because they're selling the wrong stuff to the wrong people at the wrong price. And so the more that you can figure out those three things, what are you selling, including why, right? Because, as you said, you have to understand the problem that the client's actually trying to solve. They may come to you and ask for a website. They don't really want a website. Right. No. They want the results of the website. Right. And you have to understand what that result is and who's going to be visiting it. If you don't understand that, you can't effectively build them a website.
So true. Just like you and me, none of us, even though we sell that kind of stuff in our done for you agency, I don't want a website. I want clients.
Right.
And if the website is the way to get there, great. But if I didn't have to have a website to get clients, I wouldn't have one, right? We just want,
right. I mean,
I don't really want clients. I want cash flow. And I don't really want cash flow. I want a certain lifestyle.
Yep.
And I don't really want a certain lifestyle. I want relationships with my family as we experience life. So what we're really selling is an ability for our client to experience the life they want. And backing it up, a website may help, but a website is not the end result. And when we lose sight of that, it's harder to sell the websites.
So you're saying that your clients don't simply sit there at night and just kind of, stare at the website that you've built and just enjoy it?
I hope not, because when they do, they're like, can we change fonts?
Right.
No. But yeah, you're right. They don't admire. It's not their kindergartner graduating from kindergarten. It's
Right, right,
yeah.
right. Lato or open sans, which would you prefer? Goes back and forth day by day. It's going to make a huge difference. Far too much time gets wasted on fonts and logos and all sorts of things that really don't move the needle at the end of the day.
Not at all.
Yeah.
In fact, as an example of the logo thing, so our brand Elite Agency, where we teach agencies like we talked about, that logo for that brand, we have intentionally not built a professional logo. Because if you ever look at it, it says Elite Agency. Elite is in like a dark slate gray blue. Agency is in white, and it has a dark slate gray blue box around the word agency. We did that on a Google Doc, and we have used it forever and always. And we, about once a year, it comes up, should we go ahead and get a real logo made? We're like, no, we need to keep proving that you can be hyper successful and make a ton of money with a crappy logo you made on a Google Doc. Because it's so important for all of us as business owners to realize it's who we are as business owners and communicators, not the shiny wrappers we put around ourselves that matter.
Right. And how many agencies have come to you and said, I would have worked with you except for that logo.
I've never heard it.
You lost me at the logo.
No, never heard it. And we asked each of our masterminds, hey, what do you think about our logo in like week 6 or something like that? Because we start talking about this stuff. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's horrible. You need so much help with it. I'm like, exactly. Right. And did it change your opinion of what we do? No. Right. Okay.
Yep.
Move on. Go sell a client. Don't work on your logo.
Yeah. So as we sort of near the end of our time together here today, what are you seeing right now in the agency space? How have you seen things changing amongst digital agencies? And I think, digital is a little bit different than some other agencies because a lot of digital agencies are actually growing right now because so many folks have had to turn their eye from brick and mortar to digital. But that's not across the board. But I'm curious what you're seeing amongst the folks who are in your Facebook group and that you're talking to.
Yeah. So, when early March 2020, whenever you happen to be listening or watching this, early March 2020, when COVID kind of really hit, everybody freaked out and everybody wondered what was going to happen. And it took probably, at least for us in our experience, and we serve a lot of agency owners, again, digital marketing agencies. It took maybe 2 months for that to settle. Some people were okay, but most people were just scared. And now it's July 21st. Now, for the past, I'd say 6 weeks, it feels like to us that COVID's kind of over emotionally for most of the people we serve in our industry. Now, the one exception is if this marketing or digital agency is serving brick and mortars, like they only served restaurants or only fitness facilities or something, then they're having to retool and figure out. But most of those have even figured out, there's so much to do for the restaurateur in this market. It's just learning how to communicate in a new way about a new set of needs and plans to someone who owns a restaurant.
Right.
The restaurants need us more than ever, right? If that's your market, more than ever if they're going to survive. And there are ways to help them survive. So I think people have, after several months, begun to get their head around that. And that is the cool thing about, and I'll end with this, Chip, and you go wherever you want to, but that's the cool thing about being an entrepreneur is all of us in this community right now, we get to lead the economy. We get to lead people forward with hope. We get to help someone see the opportunities that are in front of them as things change. Change happens, but the people who actually know how to see that change, take a chance, go after a market and help that market grow, that is a gift to society and a gift to grandkids and a gift to every person out there because you're keeping the momentum of the money, you're keeping the economy going. It's the little people like us who actually make the big changes. And I love having that opportunity. And I know everybody's watching and listening. That's us. That's what we get to do. It's the coolest thing ever, right?
Absolutely is. And I really couldn't have said it better myself. So I guess we'll end on that mic drop moment.
These mics are too expensive. I don't want to drop any mics.
It's rare that I get to have an episode, packaged up just that neatly at the end. And I'd like to say it's by design that I knew how to trail the questions just properly to get us to that point. But thank you for doing that. That was very helpful. If someone wants to learn more about you, Chris, or the mastermind, where can they find you?
Easiest thing to do in the world, Chip. You can just follow me on Instagram or on Facebook. I would go to Facebook, honestly. The Elite Agency Inner Circle. Elite Agency Inner Circle is our Facebook group. I do free Q&A in there multiple times a week. And that's a completely free group. It's only for agency owners, though, that have at least a year of experience. So not just leaving their 9 to 5. You need a little bit of experience on your belt, and it'll be extremely relevant because we answer questions. If you have questions, we will answer them. Our goal is to make everyone more profitable so you can make more money, work less time. And we do it all completely for free in that Facebook group. That's where I invest my free time.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining me, Chris. It's been a great conversation. I think that listeners have picked up a lot from it and be able to apply to their own businesses, and hopefully they'll check out your Facebook group and your other resources. So
absolutely.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. See you soon.
Again, my guest today has been Chris Williams. He has a dog and he likes to paddleboard.